Thank you everyone for joining us on Industrial Marketing Live this morning. I'm Peyton Warren. I'm a strategist here at Gorilla and one of the hosts here at IML. We are super excited to have you all, and we've got a great guest here, Michael Murphy from Hike2. So I'll tell you a little bit about him. Actually, Michael and Dan from Hike2. So we're really excited to talk a little bit more today with them. But before we get into the topic and before we get into all the tactical and just great tips that we've got here, I want to just do a little bit of housekeeping like we normally do. Industrial Marketing Live, if it's your first time here, an extra welcome for you. This is a space where we try and gather as many industrial marketers as possible so that we can learn from each other and we can grow our careers, we can grow our companies, drive results, and innovate marketing tactics at our companies. So we love to see faces. We love to pull folks on stage. The chat is most of the time very, very, very hot, and I try my best to keep up and pull folks on stage from there. So if you have questions, please put them in. And then the other last little tidbit is just while we are talking at the very beginning, we try and talk for about 20, 30 minutes or so, and then pull in folks for questions. Please mute so that others can hear everything. And that's about it. So today we are talking about the most valuable and important tool, in our opinion, that a marketer can have, and that is the CRM. So there are tons of CRMs out there, and it's no secret that Gorilla's fans of HubSpot. But we work with a lot of manufacturers who currently have or are in the process of implementing things like Salesforce. I know if you are in the chat, feel free to drop in what you use as your CRM, even if it's a spreadsheet. We'd like to know because we can kind of tailor the conversation to what you do. But we're really, really pleased that today we've got Michael Murphy from Hike2 on the IML stage. Michael is a senior Salesforce consultant and has been working in CRMs since the 90s and really started implementing them when they just started to come online. So thanks so much for joining us, Mike. I know you've done a lot. You worked in manufacturing industries specifically as well in the beginning. Do you mind sharing just a little bit about yourself before we jump into the conversation?
I appreciate it, Peyton. Thanks so much for having me here with Gorilla and IML. I'm honored to be able to speak to the rest of fellow marketers out there. To give a quick background on myself, yes, I've been around with CRMs and marketing for a long time. I used to run a marketing department for a distribution company and then for a manufacturing company. So I understand being on the trade floor, up those things, trying to capture leads via Excel spreadsheets when you're at trade shows, and then it morphed to scanning badges and from there on. So been around that a long time. The last probably 10 to 15 years, I was a global leader for a CRM for a large chemical company, working with the manufacturing side as well as the distributors. And then also I also worked for the last several years before I came over to Hike2. And the consulting side is I worked for Valvoline Motor Oil, who does a lot of marketing globally. So I work closely with our marketing department to implement build that sales team. Us marketers, as well as our sales teams, could both see benefits on both sides of it. So that's a little background on myself. I'm very familiar with the global CRMs. I also have a lot of experience with ERP systems. Helped implement an SAP system globally. Been on 5 or 6 different other SAP upgrades and implementations, as well as CRMs, and most recently with Hike2, working with an industrial manufacturer and helping them stand up their marketing cloud instance with Pardot and some different things there from different companies. So I have a various background in different areas with it. Most of it has been on the manufacturing, distribution, and seeing the shift from going from a B2B to a B2C on that. Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's about myself.
Yeah, it's amazing, and we're very fortunate to have your expertise on the line with us today. One of the questions we just kind of wanted to jump in with is if you could answer at a very high line, like, why is your CRM the greatest marketing tool that you have besides I think your brain, right?
True. I think the biggest thing I've found with that is it allows sales and marketing to collaborate together in one system. We're not putting things in multiple places, passing spreadsheets, and it also allows it to happen in real time. We've talked before previously, different things. Analytics becomes key and allows you to measure things, but it's a sharing of information, and it's one place, one single source of truth.
Mary, Brendan, would y'all say anything separate, different?
Yeah, I think it just helps you make good decisions, right? Like it's hard to make good marketing and sales decisions with no data, right? And so like the CRM is a place for you to house that data and see trends that are happening over time. So I think like you're very much handicapping yourself without having that place to go and get the data for making decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Brendan and Mike have said, and I'm really looking forward to Mike's further explanations. But I think the biggest miss is with a CRM is thinking that it's a sales and marketing tool. Your CRM is a business tool. It's how you make like more educated business decisions in the long run.
Just I've seen is that what you don't want to do is remember the tool works for you. You don't work for the tool. So many people try to force their processes into maybe some standard things, not realizing you can make changes to systems. Have it fit your business process. That's the biggest thing. Have it fit your business processes. Have the tool work for you.
Yeah, I saw, Mary, when you said business tool, I saw Luke's hands go up.
So
Yes.
Mike, as we go further to this
Yeah.
conversation, we have a lot of people on HubSpot and Salesforce. So we asked a very scientific poll in the IML Slack community. Thanks everyone for answering that. We had 10 responses. So most of those responses were for Salesforce and HubSpot. And then we had a couple others for like Pipedrive, Zoho, Pipeliner. And then inside of chat here, we had a couple, sorry, Tom, he says he's on a self-hosted gold mine. We see some other Salesforce, HubSpot. Whitney's on an in-house tool connected to their ERP. Let's see what else here. Yeah, Luke's in here with Pipeliner Sales. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So HubSpot and Salesforce seems to be the main ones, and then smatterings of some smaller ones.
Yeah, and the key is no matter which one, the key is using some type of CRM. There's a lot of them out there. Some are free that people can download and stuff. And based on how sophisticated you want to get and how big your business is, determines your needs and what type of business case you want to, which helps determine then your use cases to go get it. So I'm with you. Yeah, the key is just having something for information. Go ahead, Peyton.
Oh, and my dogs are probably going to join in a little bit today. They're feeling feisty. But I just wanted to say this conversation today came up because actually, Jared, this was a few months back, Jared Beasley, you mentioned that you wanted to have a conversation around that struggle that marketers feel about like qualifying leads and like when you hand off the lead to sales, making sure that the sales team actually does something with it and just creating that feedback loop and a better process there. So we wanted to have a larger conversation about that. So maybe we just jump in. When it comes to qualifying leads, like what advice can you give? How can your CRM help you with that?
Yeah, the biggest thing I look at is it's got to be a partnership between sales and marketing. For marketing and even sales, people all of a sudden go out and try to buy a list. Hey, I've got 1,000 people, and they dump them on people. That's very difficult for a sales team to consume or a marketing team to manage. Drip campaigns are good from that aspect. One thing I found effectively is I work with it from a marketing standpoint, trying to get those 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of data that actually you qualify that the person's a fit for business, that, hey, they might be able to use our product. At that point, then sending it over to the sales team, and sales team then can further investigate it and say, okay, because from a marketing side, we're not making a decision whether or not the person can buy or will buy, right? So you're not making a decision whether or not they will buy. We're trying to say, can they buy our product? Can they use it? Have they shown an interest? Then it's up to the sales team when we hand it over to them to further foster that relationship to understand what can the customer use. So as you're going through this, it's that fit for business. That's the metric I always try to use is from a marketing standpoint, hey, I've identified they have an interest in our products or interest in our service. Great. Now I've passed it to sales to further investigate that and say, okay, now I've done that. Are they a fit for our business? And then from marketing, we can gain information back from sales based on how they tag that. The biggest there becomes the fact that, just because we don't get a sale from that person, it may be the fact that they were a good fit. Maybe they're on a 10-year contract with somebody else, so sales couldn't sell them. However, from marketing side, that's a successful lead, in my opinion. And that's where you have to distinguish that. I'm giving you qualified leads. And that's really how you get to marketing from there and build that partnership and that trust with sales.
Yeah, Mike, I think it comes down to like figuring out like what are real definitions of where people are at in the process, right? Like if you get a bunch of leads from your trade show, or you go and, God forbid, buy a list of names, those are not leads, right? Like that person has not come and said, I want to talk to you and talk to a salesperson about your product.
Yep.
Right. So that person with that email address goes into your bucket of marketing contacts that sales never sees or touches. Like that's, I think, where a lot of this, the friction comes between marketing and sales, is because marketing is trying to push forward all of these so-called leads over to sales, right? To say like, look at how good marketing is doing. Look, we've driven all these leads to sales, and now sales is not closing anything, but sales is like, well, marketing doesn't know what they're doing because none of these people actually want to buy, right? So we have to like that handoff. We need to figure out like what that handoff is. And Mike, I think there might be some disagreements here between you and the Gorilla team, right? Because you're saying like trying like, and I think there's some, with marketing contacts, nurturing them, but I haven't really seen like, scoring a lead as something that's really effective, right? Because like that person hasn't raised their hand. To me, where that handoff happens is we nurture people with the marketing contacts. We get, webinars, trade shows, lists, people on social media. We have their contact information. We deliver to them good content, right? We show them, we have them trust us, right? We give them case studies. We show them testimonials. We build their expertise by giving them articles and inviting them to more webinars. And then, we show them, here's some of the product offerings that we have. But then that handoff where that contact becomes an actual lead and goes into the sales side is they have to me, go to your website and fill out a high intent form. They fill out my request a quote form. They give me their name, their email, how they heard about us, and what their project is. And that's when they go from marketing contact into lead bucket, where sales can then qualify them and say, so they're a good fit for the business. So marketing said they're a good fit for the business. They can buy our product, and now sales can look, do they want to buy the product now? Right. That's who sales needs to be talking to, right? So like that so then they move from that marketing contact bucket into the lead bucket. And now that's where we have a good handoff. What do you guys think?
And Brandon, you're exactly right on the money there. The key is defining those metrics and talking with your sales team and getting buy-in from either top executive, or I found a lot of times the top executives may not fully understand it. So you find that one, either sales rep or sales manager who can be your champion. Start with them and say, let's talk about and develop those metrics. Hey, let me try giving you these 5. Here's what I did with them. They just work. So it's a give and take, and sales go, well, it would be great if they'd ask this question. Okay, great. Now I know. Or it'd be nice if I saw they also clicked here, type of thing. With that, I think that's a big piece of it, is getting that trust from the sales team to get that back and forth. To then, every business is so different in terms of how they nurture leads because of where you're going at. But when you boil it down, a lot of it's very similar. When you get to that, and the key is getting the buy-in from the sales team, because if you send a seller 100 leads, he or she is going to be overwhelmed. They might not even touch them, or they touch the first 3 and like, oh, these are nothing, and then they're done with the list. And that's what you want to avoid. How do you send them those 4 or 5, and then after you see they've touched them and you get some feedback, now I send them another 5. That way you keep the cycle going, because you're exactly right, Brendan.
Can I chime in here for a sec?
Yeah, Luke.
I just think everybody, I've triggered people on LinkedIn and in conversations. I think I triggered Grace right the other day. Everybody has to be careful on this call and everywhere to know what their organization defines as a lead. And like we call people that want to buy opportunities in our organization. Everybody pulls an opportunity number, it gets an opportunity. And I was talking to Grace and I said, we want to double the amount of leads, and she blew her lid on me, but I was really talking about opportunities. So, some companies might call them ding dongs or whatever they are. And people really need to define what it is in their organization and not get tied up on arguing over what it is on LinkedIn like I do sometimes.
And Lucas, I'm going to jump in here. You're exactly right. I've sat in many conversations where marketing will call that, well, no, that's a lead, and sales go, well, no, we call it a lead. And that's a huge piece. I'll say define that seller journey, that marketing to seller journey, what's it look like and what do the handoffs look like? Because you're exactly right. Because a lot of times sales will go, hey, I've got the lead, but now I'm going to take it to truly what's a buying opportunity. Using some terminology from some of the CRMs, they go from, a lead, now I'm going to convert to that opportunity because now I'm identifying what product they're actually going to buy. And you're exactly right. That's a huge piece of defining from with marketing. It's that terminology with everybody. Mary's laughing a lot up there, so she.
So Mike, one thing
that chat's blowing up.
So Mike, one thing I've seen in CRMs is way too many fields, right? Like they have fields for everything under the sun, and almost none of them are ever filled in. So from your perspective, like for, let's talk like marketing contacts, leads, and then, moving into like opportunities in the pipeline, like what are like the required fields in your mind to actually like move, like to get the right information to move them through this process? And like, what fields should we probably stay away from that aren't adding any value?
Yeah. And I think that one thing to talk about a lot is what you measure and report on is what people are going to fill out. That's what they're going to do. So when you think about your business, your analytics, you want to think about what is senior leadership asking you about, then those are the key fields you want to circle in on. Obviously, when you talk about a lead or a contact, you really need, a name, an email or a phone number. If you can get their title, is great. And then the company name. And if you know something about them, what product did they click on? That's where you need to start. You try to pull your other sources of information together. Can you connect to Zoom Info has information, LinkedIn has information. You get company websites. How do you tie into these other sources to build more information with that? The one thing I always try to do with the sales team a lot is keep it simple. One thing I've learned with the CRM is, and it's a term I've used a lot, is salespeople believe it is it's I'm feeding the beast. Hey, marketing's asked for another field of information, or now supply chain wants something. It becomes feeding the beast. So the way to get around that is, as marketers, one thing I've learned is how can you ever, when sales puts something in, how can I give them something back? An example I'll use is I'm going to ask them to fill out who the competitor is they're going against their opportunity. As a result of that, from a marketing side, if they choose competitor A, now maybe I can serve up to my sales team, here's information about that competitor. Here's what we know about them. So it's things like that. So that way it's a give and take. It's not just sales feels like they're feeding everything in, not getting anything out of it. Because you're exactly, the biggest thing that happens is I look at account pages, I look at contact pages, I look at lead pages, and people have 50, 60, 70 fields on there.
Yeah.
That's not reasonable. Because what happens is somebody gets a great idea and says, let's just put a field in here, I'm going to track it. And it gets really overwhelming, and then the information does become useless, and people just skip a lot of it, especially when you put a lot of required fields. But coming back to answer your question, Brandon, realistically, 5 or 6 fields on that first time is what you can gather for people, and then you can build upon that as you go forward. And then once you get more trust with your team and your sales team, and you can educate them and work with them, you'll begin to gather. They'll say, you know what, I'll spend that extra 5 or 10 seconds and fill out 2 more fields because I know in return, here's the information I'm getting back for it. Here's the information marketing or, purchasing, whoever else is providing back to me, sales. So I see, comes back to the old, I use the WIFM approach. What's in it for me? I'm putting something in the system, but as a salesperson, what am I getting out of marketing? I'm going to invest in that salesperson, but I need to get something in back. I'm going to put all this time and effort to give you the leads. I would really like you to then tell me what happens to them. So, yeah.
We've had a few questions around lead scoring, and I know we want to talk a little bit about automation. But I also want to just kind of echo back a point that you made earlier of just like the building trust. And I think it's really important to just say that implementing a CRM is not easy. And just because it's digital, it's a tool that can do a lot for you, doesn't mean that you don't have to put in the work to make it happen. So I guess I want to hear your thoughts on lead scoring, when that might come into play, how it can help you.
Yeah. One thing also, so give a little more background on myself. I'm also huge into process. That's one thing that I found I studied with this gentleman called Michael Hammer. He teaches process. So that's a huge thing, because that's, as you talk about marketing and sales, understanding your sales process and what makes them tick really helps them when you come back to lead scoring with those pieces. And that's the piece of data you're talking about. What's important to my sales team? What really are their nuggets? So as far as lead scoring, like when you look at it, you can say, okay, I've got their name, I've got a valid email address, I got a phone number, I've got the company name, I got them linked to LinkedIn profiles or Zoom info, some other info. Maybe I've got those 5 pieces of data, so that gives them a point. Okay, now what else does my sales team need to believe it's a qualified lead? And that's where you get into some lead scoring. And this is where you also bring in automation and other pieces. Do I start emailing that customer or that potential customer? Have they clicked on a link? So now potentially tying in my Google Analytics. What URLs have they clicked through? As Brendan mentioned earlier, did they fill out a form now and show an interest? Boom, that's going to move it higher up on the score sheet. Or did they click link A or link B? Was it the second or third email? Those are all different things that you can get in and dive into and score them based on your business. And one thing too is don't get set on it. It's ever evolving. And it's something you need to evaluate once a quarter, or every, at least twice a year at a minimum, because business is changing so quickly. And so is the way we go to market on this. So that's a huge piece of it also.
Gorilla team, what are your thoughts on lead scoring? Mary smiling.
I don't like lead scoring from an automation perspective, not from a warm to cold lead perspective. I've just very rarely seen automated lead scoring work really well. And it's not because it maybe doesn't necessarily work, but because the strategy isn't there. So there may be marketing, to Mike's point, maybe marketing has just made the decision, like, this is how we're going to score a lead when we pass it off to sales, but sales hasn't bought in. So sales doesn't believe that that lead scoring is accurate. So then you have like a mismatch strategy, and that creates marketing and sales misalignment. So I don't think that it can't work. I've just not seen it work effectively, especially when it's automated.
Yeah. And how do you even do it right? Like, who knows, how many points to give to a webinar? Like, someone watches a whole webinar. So how many points does that get? And then somebody reads an article. How many points does that get? And then somebody clicks open this email. How many points is that? Like, it feels like, whose line is it anyways, right? Like, these points are made up and they don't matter. Right. I think it's a good way to see how, are they reacting to my content? But I don't think I would ever say all right, once I hit 87 points, now they move over into sales, because to me, they haven't raised their hand and said they want to talk to sales yet. So that's kind of where I'm at with lead scoring.
It is a challenging thing to implement. I've seen it implemented a couple of times and successful, but it really takes a good partnership between sales and marketing. Where I can say it's been more successful is when you're talking, you have an existing customer and doing upselling, because now I'm looking at trends of what they've purchased from me, and I'm looking at customers, what else they've bought. So I have more an opportunity to send that lead over. Hey, this customer might be an opportunity to sell this material, because you're exactly right, both Mary and Brandon. It's a challenge to implement the lead scoring, because unless you have true buy-in from sales and marketing, a set of eyes is always going to be a little better in those cases right now, early on.
Mike, we had another question about tracking lead source. So Rachel asked this one, and she said, how do you track lead source when you're dealing with a buying group? So for example, a lot of our demand generation programs, we're targeting engineers, operations type people that are the ones that are actually use the thing that we sell. But a lot of times we have to bring in a buying committee to help, move that along, whether it be some sort of company leadership or procurement or buying. So how have you tracked a lead source moving from, engineers see something on LinkedIn, so we track that to paid social, but then once it gets over into the buying committee, what does that look like? Because should that person be tracked back to that paid social source, or should they be tracked to sales or some other thing?
It's a great example. And actually I had a scenario with that, because working for a large chemical company, a lot of times I'm working with the engineer that's going to spec in the designs or things that need to be built. If you're bidding a job with the state of with the government's writing all the contracts and what the specs are, but the consultant or the engineer I'm working with is the one who's helping give input to those specs. So that person is potentially giving me the lead. So sometimes you may have a second lead source, because you really want to know what it originated from. Here's how I got in that, and I track that engineer, I track that contractor to help give me the lead from there. but the person who's actually making the buy decision came through via LinkedIn. So again, it's okay to have two lead sources, an initial one that helps you get spec'd in per se, and then a second one then that says, okay, here's how the sale originated, or here's what triggered the sale piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it comes back to some of this. I'm trying to talk specific. It's challenging though with all the different businesses, but from a manufacturing side, that's how I've done a lot of it with having engineers speak it in.
So another thing that kind of came up during our preparation for this conversation today was we talked a little bit about automation and what it could be used for. I think a lot of questions in the chat are like, all right, so we've got all these contacts in our CRM. Some of them can go to sales, but some of them just need to stay in the CRM. So like, what does that nurturing look like? Like, how can you use your CRM to then continue to develop relationships and ultimately build a book of business for that you can eventually hand off to your sales team?
No, exactly right. That's where we talked about someone buys that list of 1,000. Well, 10 are good right away. They send them out to sales. Now you've got the other 990, what to do with. Well, that's where the ideal is. You keep them in there, but they're in a marketing queue, I'll call it. Marketing owns them. Let marketing nurture them, whether it be via emails, hoping they'll click through on a link, sending them invites to additional webinars or different trade shows you're doing, somehow get that additional point or touch point. And at that point, when you feel it's warm, let's say going from cold to warm, that they've shown that interest, now you pass them over to the ownership and sales with that piece of it. Because what you'd be surprised is once you have that list, all of a sudden that person may come in different ways to your system.
Brendan,
I know we
Mary,
have-
you
Yeah.
guys have any thoughts on nurturing
Brendan.
leads?
I would say,
Yeah, I mean, like nurturing leads, like from a tactical standpoint.
Yeah, I guess like if you've got them in your CRM, like what are you doing with those contacts if they're not going to sales? Like, do you just let them sit there or and wait and watch, lurk, or are you doing something a little bit more active with them?
Yeah, I think this goes back to Brendan's point on how they came in. So how were they considered a lead? Did they just fill out like your newsletter subscription, or did they fill out a high intent form? So did they say, I want to contact you, and they just kind of are now sitting in your CRM? So I would say that's kind of how I was able to put the CRM in a higher respect at my old company that I was at. We had a ton of leads just coming in through various mechanisms on the website. So it could have been they downloaded a white paper, they downloaded a bulletin. They actually said, I want to talk to sales. And they were just kind of all lumped in this category of online leads. And I filtered it out and said, hey, all of these people who are saying, I want to contact sales, I want to talk to sales, are not getting followed up with because they're lumped into this giant category of thousands of other leads that are just online leads. So that's how I was able to kind of raise that respect, and maybe like, we need to further categorize using some kind of automation system on which forms people are filling out, and making sure that those get sent to sales with kind of like a higher alert system. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Then I'd say for those marketing contacts that are in there, like those are people that wanted to interact with your company still. It doesn't mean that they haven't, like, they don't want to talk to sales yet, but they want to talk to the marketing side of the company, right? So I would either take those contacts and put them into a retargeting campaign on paid social and deliver content to them that way. And, or, you do like a weekly newsletter, maybe not a newsletter, but a weekly email where you aggregate some of the content that you're creating and continue to put information out in front of them, keep educating them, keep building trust with them, so that when they do enter that buying mode, they go back to your form and they fill that out and they say they want to talk to sales, right? Like we talked about in our demand generation IML, like what maybe 2% of your audience is in a buying mode at any given time, right? So you can't expect any of these marketing contacts to just be like, yep, let's go. So keep, being top of mind, getting good content out there. And then, wait for them to fill out that form is what I would say to do with those marketing contacts.
And to add on to that, Brendan, the other thing too is when you talk about consumers nowadays, if you're at top of mind, you touch that person, let's say once a month or once every other month, something may happen with their current supplier.
Right.
that's usually what happens. There's a failure in the other supplier that gives you that opportunity, and all of a sudden you just happen to be there. So it's how do you keep it top of mind? Another strategy I was add on to this, a couple of things I've done in the past with different areas when you have all this is sometimes it can be overwhelming. So what you do is you try to find a way to partner with maybe the sales team and say, okay, we've got 50 of these that are located right in Nashville, Tennessee. We have a rep in Nashville, Tennessee. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hire a temp to just call these 50 people and ask 3 or 4 questions to gauge interest. Like, do they use this product, or what do they do today? What's their business like? And use that as, okay, now I'm going to give those right to that sales rep in Nashville to see how it works. And if it works well, now you've got some more buy-in from sales teams. So there's some different tactics like that that I've used over my years. And the key is having that champion and that buy-in from the sales team. And they'll help define for you as marketers, what, as us in marketing, what is my, what means a hot lead, when it goes up. And it's that partnership.
So Mike, we have a question from the field. So Brittany, I would like you to unmute and come on and join us. But this is a problem that industrial marketers have had since the beginning of time. So Brittany, please hit us with your question, and hopefully Mike can give us a good answer here.
Yeah.
Hi, yes, thank you. This is very timely because I literally just had a meeting with my digital marketing manager and the Salesforce admin yesterday about our lead. So we have a Salesforce instance.
Okay.
We're a global organization, but I just work for the Northern Hemisphere, this half. So we have one Salesforce instance for Latin America, Canada, and the US. The US is very terrible at using the CRM. We don't follow up on leads. They don't look at them. They don't see any value. And then on top of that, most of our business is done through distribution. So what will happen is we'll get a lead in, and maybe through trade shows. And then apparently the sales guys have been instructed, hey, don't look at these leads. And then on top of that, a lot of times when we make sales, because we have 50 sales reps, we depend on distribution. So then when the sales goes to distribution, we have no idea. So I think when I was talking to the sales, not the sales rep, but the Salesforce admin, she said it's probably about less than 10% of our business that we actually make in a month is actually located in Salesforce. So wondering if you have any tips when stuff goes to distribution.
So you have a couple questions in there, so I can help answer that, because actually I did work for a large chemical company that we went through. Most of our business was through distribution on the one side, manufacturing. So a lot of that is how are you communicating and understanding how are the sales reps compensated with their sales through distribution? And the way to look at that is, okay, if I get those 100 leads in and I know they're all going to, Brittany's distribution company, great.
Mm-hmm.
Am I now following up with that sales rep? So that the way I approach it is, listen, sales rep, now I've given you another talking point when you go see that distributor. Here's another reason to go see that distributor and interact with them. You can ask them about these 100 customers. I know you've got a lot of things to talk to them, but this immediately gets you in the door with them to say, hey, I just want to check and see, we sent you these 100. Can you let me know what happened? And that way you can also then, that gives the sales rep a way to talk to that distributor, say, see, I'm bringing you business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it.
So it's, again, it comes back to what's in for the sales rep. What's their incentive to look at those leads and do that? So you have to say, how do they interact with the distributors today? Are they just paid purely on, the amount of product through that distributor? That may be a different take. Do they interact with 3 or 4 reps at that distributor? Because what you can do from your CRM is you can actually, when those leads come in, you can set it up so it can automatically send that lead to the distributor. And you can do some different things where you can put links in it so the distributor can tell you what happened to it.
Got it. Does that distributor have to be in your CRM? No. Oh,
No.
okay.
So you can do some different things like that where, hey, I sent you a lead, and you can copy the sales rep on it. So that way your sales rep then can say, listen, we sent you that lead last week. What happened with it?
Mm-hmm.
It gives them, again, sales is always looking for some reason to talk to that distributor or that customer versus when it's a problem. So this is something good to talk about. Hey, I just gave you 10 leads. How did this work out?
Got it. Okay.
Hopefully that answers your question. I'm happy to at another time go in deeper with you and share that, because it's definitely the distribution model. And then you have some other things in there with people trying to hoard information. Who owns the customer, which is changing a lot, that whole, because it's now going more B2C, it's changing a lot.
Yep. Jared, can you unmute and talk? So Jared snuck in here. He's from a And so,
you
Jared,
go.
can you talk about like how you see that relationship with your manufacturers, working within a CRM? Like what does work best for you?
Sure. It looks really different. We partner with a lot of companies here, and we kind of cover a lot of bases in various marketing departments. Some are really good about giving marketing materials. Some are really strict about they want everything to go through their website. So it just kind of goes company to company, but I don't have much interaction as far as sharing data or information as much as I would have thought I would, as far as like what Brittany was talking about. It's whenever you're going through distributors, it's hard to know where they're getting those leads in. And I'm happy to share that information with people if I can have a mutual partnership as far as getting content, getting data, because often I feel like I'm competing against the people that we're representing because they're also going through other distributors that we're competing. I often feel like I'm both competing against our direct competition as well as our vendors, especially when it comes to SEO in particular.
Yeah.
Hey, Brittany, can I ask you a question?
Oh, yep.
Did you say only 10% of your revenue per month is actually in Salesforce?
Yes. Yeah. So I asked yesterday and the Salesforce admin was like, we're pretty terrible here in the US, but it's not like that in Canada or Latin America.
I'm a sales manager, so I'd give you permission to go smack your sales manager. Because I just point back to what Mary said about CRM being a business tool, not a marketing tool or a sales tool, but a business tool. And I mean, we have a rule that every single opportunity goes in the system. And if I have a question, if I'm going and searching for pricing and asking a question to an operations manager, if it's not in there, he's just like, this opportunity doesn't exist. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and I
Not
think
in there, it doesn't
Salesforce has that rule too, but we just don't follow it here. Like we found out yesterday that people don't look at leads in the CRM, that customer service only makes cases. So what we've been told now is to take our forms, make them web to case forms, and that if the opportunity is over $5,000, then the sales guys will get it, and then they might follow up. And so it's just and I think in the beginning, maybe like we were all talking, you guys were talking, it was like a little bit of like, they were burned because they were just getting like all these like leads thrown in and now they're trash. So I definitely do think we need a conversation because as a sales manager, like you said, I would expect you would want to know that, like, hey, where are we getting our accounts from? Where is the business coming from? And we can't see any of that. It's terrible.
Hey, so Chris wanted to make some points here. So Chris, feel free to jump in here, and I'd love to hear what your opinion is on this.
Yeah, I think this comes to the strategy, the CRM strategy, and really, in addition to what you guys have said, as for what a CRM is supposed to do, I think one of the ultimate goals should be putting anybody who's selling the product in a position to win. And if you can prove it's going to do that, whether it's a direct sales person or a channel partner, then they will use the tool. And if you can't force them to use the tool, especially in distributions, then you have to have a channel manager or a sales manager that's really focused on monthly, weekly, following up and making sure the data's in the system. But I have heard scenarios where manufacturing companies have been able to get their distributors to come into their CRM, and use it because they know it's in their best interest to do that, because then they get better support from the manufacturer to then sell the product. So that's kind of how I view that scenario. I haven't seen it done well with most manufacturers, but especially in the case of HubSpot, where it's free to bring anybody in you want to see data, that there should be a pathway to making sure they know it's valuable for them. And then you get the data you want, especially when it's 4 or 5 fields. And then it, should add value from there.
I think this goes back to a point too that Mike, Mary, and Brendan have all made, I think too, about just finding that sales advocate, someone who can really help communicate and translate the value. And Mary, it reminds me of something that you mentioned before about finding like that report, or like helping, like, what can you do from the marketing seat? Like, you can't make sales do everything you want them to do, but how can you influence them to do what you need them to do?
Yeah, I can say from an internal perspective, like that's my success story. What I didn't tell you guys is the 10 reports I tried to show my leadership team before that to get them interested in the CRM. So I failed at original source. I failed at where the lead's coming from. I failed at life cycle stage. Like, I tried to show them all these reports, and you just have to keep doing it, keep showing them these reports matter until one starts to like stick. So the one that stuck was this: hey, we have tons and tons of inbound leads that we're getting, and these ones from the high intent forums are ready to buy and they're not being followed up with. And when they are being followed up with by sales reps who are a little more aggressive, they convert at a faster rate too. So they're converting into opportunities and then customers at a faster rate. So that's the report I found. But yeah, I failed at 10 times before that.
But Mary, the one thing you do, you fail fast.
Exactly.
That's the key. Like anything in life, fail fast and get on to the next thing.
Yep.
And just like the advantage, and I don't know that we've actually made this point yet, but the advantage of having a tool, a CRM versus a spreadsheet CRM, is that you can then pull these reports, right? You can manipulate the data much more quickly instead of having to spend hours and hours and hours and then all of a sudden finding, oh, well, I missed that one field that I should have pulled. So now I've got to export data again in some weird way. Definitely another point in the let's get a CRM category.
Yeah. And I think Mike like underplayed this statement about finding your sales champion. That was critical. So I know you guys have heard, some of you have been here before, the sales rep I partnered with to ghostwrite for LinkedIn. I also partnered with him to like, he showed me exactly how he uses the CRM to like follow up with leads and stuff. And I was able to just kind of like dig in there and help him specifically with like email automations, like lead nurturing, helping him to like qualify leads. And that was huge. Like, we were able, just from one sales rep we had 85 sales reps, one rep out of 85. And all of a sudden that's the thing that said, where the sales manager, VP of sales and marketing, came to us and was like, what are you guys doing? You guys are doing something and I want to know what it is.
And Mary, you hit the nail on the head. That's what my success with that too, is you find that one partner, because me standing up there in front of the sales team or sales managers telling them this works, not as good. But you get a sales rep who's advocating for you, that goes miles, because their peers are more often to listen to them because they want to know, hey, what's in it for me? That increases my revenue, that increases my bonus, my sales incentive. Now they're interested, and that's coming from their peer. So Mary, you're exactly right. That's the huge piece of it, is find that one person that can really partner with you and then let them be the voice.
So I know we've talked through quite a bit. I've got one more question, one more point I just want to make sure y'all talk about before we hand it off to any questions that folks have in the audience. We talked a little bit about having a clear start and end point in that handoff process. Can y'all speak to that a little bit more specifically? Because I just want to make sure we want to make sure that responsibility, is being handed off between marketing and sales. And so like, we need to have definitions of those handoff points, I guess. So can y'all just speak a little bit more to that process?
Mary, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So at my old company, before I partnered with this sales rep, marketing didn't have any say in how a lead was handed off to sales. So going back to like Karen's point way up in the chat before, is like, you have to have that buy-in from somebody like a sales director or a sales manager who says, hey, marketing is going to decide if this lead is a business fit first and then send it off to sales. So like I've told you guys, all of our leads were just lumped into this giant lead category. And the only way that they were categorized was by a super general original source. So it could have just been like trade show, Zoom info, or online lead. Like that was pretty much it. So I think getting the buy-in, finding that champion so that you can start to really segregate those lead sources and then more deeply assess which of those leads are qualified and why, and doing it for that one person and then showing how easy it is to scale a process like that out to other reps.
Yeah, and I echo that, Mary, hit it down the head. You and I talked before about this. It's about keep it simple. Keep it simple and have a clear definition of here's marketing, we're going to hand it to you this way. And then that keeps evolving. That's the biggest thing, is keep evolving, keep improving the process, because as Mary mentioned, sometimes things, you're going to send things over and be like, wow, that didn't work at all. Okay, let's talk to sales about it. How can we change and modify this? You know, it's that partnership and getting that buy-in and agreement from sales is the key.
Chris had another question for you, Mike.
Yeah, about when you see it click for leadership teams or even sales leadership, especially when the CRM's dirty and it's been owned by sales or, you know, heaven forbid, IT. And when does it click for them that there needs to be a strategy behind the use of the tool?
Yeah,
like when do they sit down and actually, you know, create that strategy?
Yeah, I one of the terms I've always used, I try to move people from adoption to addiction for the CRM, you know, and it's like anything. I mean, I'm going to date myself here. You know, I started out with Franklin planners, and you've got that. Then you move to Excel spreadsheets, people had Word documents. And again, it comes back to, you have to show what's in it for me. And you have to find that champion from the sales team that says, hey, I don't know why you're doing it this way. It's so much easier for me. Because then that sales manager goes, wait a minute. Instead of having that call on Friday that says, tell me what you did this week, that call changes, and it's change management. That call changes into, oh, I see you closed these 6 opportunities. You've got these 5 others. Let's now talk about these 5, how we can advance them, versus spending the first 20 minutes. What did you do? And that's where you have to do that change management and show that convince a little bit, influence, to say, here's where I can save you time. Because that's what it's all about. Here's how I can save you time with those non-value activities so you can spend more time selling. Because you're exactly right, Chris. I mean, that's the challenge, is getting them over some of those humps to realize, but wait, I've always done it this way. You know, and I saw some other things come up in the chat. It's like, what I've always found is you have 25% that are going to run with you. They're going to be out in front of you with things. You have 50% in the middle that are going, should I or shouldn't I? And then you get 25% that are going to be naysayers. Unfortunately, naysayers usually get really loud. So you just have to, in a way, ignore them. That's where leadership has to take care of those. It's that top 25% you want to focus on, because they can influence the other 50 to bring along, and then the noise goes away. So hopefully that answered your question, Chris. Or
What if leadership is a naysayer?
Oh,
and that's where I've run into that too. I had a VP who was a naysayer, and that's where you have to work with the sales team and the sales managers. You have to have it bubble up from them, because that's not something, as a marketing person, it's very difficult for you. It has to come then from the groundswell. You have to find those champions underneath that are telling that VP, listen, my sales grew because of this, and have some documents from that aspect. Then then hopefully they'll become a believer. They may never become a believer, but if you've got the sales team and sales managers using things, they're the people on the ground.
So I think that last part answered the question. It sounds like some kind of result is required to get it to click.
Yep. Sometimes you have to get a result, because you have the folks that are, no matter what you do, nope, I don't believe the sky's blue. You know, no matter what you do, it's like, wait a minute, it is. Let me show you this data. And just so you have to have other people also there with you in your side.
Thanks, Mike.
No, you're welcome, Chris. Pleasure.
Well,
Appreciate the question.
this has been an absolutely fabulous way to start the morning. Thank you to Mike and Brendan and Mary and Luke and Chris and Katie and Brittany, everyone who came on and who's been participating and giving advice in the chat. This is the reason why we want this space to even exist, because I feel like I've learned things from y'all, and just appreciate you all being here to share your wisdom and learn from each other. I think that there's definitely an opportunity for a future IML episode about that specific relationship between distributors and manufacturers. So we'll dive into that. But I'd love if you're a distributor and you work with manufacturers or vice versa, would love to hear from you on what your thoughts about what that conversation should look like, because I just think that could be a really valuable one. It's super important to a lot of folks in the industrial realm. So we've been trying to end these sessions with the one thing, the one action that we would suggest you carry from the conversation today and do something with, right? So Michael, I'd like to ask you, like, from today's conversation in context of CRMs, like, what is the one thing you'd like to see folks leave today and go do to improve their lot in life with their CRM?
Sam, like I said, the biggest thing I come back to is find that one champion you can partner with, that one person that really wants to try it and can see the value in it, because the hours and hours you spend trying to meet with leadership, whatever, it's going to be a challenge. But if you have that one partner who's actually using it and you can show some things where they're going, hey, this saved me 15 seconds, this saved me 30 seconds, allow me to make one extra call a day, that's going to speak louder volumes to your leadership and to everyone else and their peers. Realize you're not in this alone. Use that sales champion or that person to help you from there.
Mary?
Yeah, mine would be find the report or the metrics that matter to your leadership team. So if you're having trouble getting buy-in from either sales, marketing, whoever, find those reports. And like Mike mentioned very accurately, fail fast and keep moving forward.
Yeah. And then I'd say we need to simplify and organize this beast of data, right? So let's organize our people into buckets, right? We have marketing contacts, we have leads where we hand off to sales, and then we have the pipeline that the sales works in. And then simplify the fields, get it to where it's usable, where people are actually going to fill the thing out. It's just like our forms for request a quote. If you have 20 fields, no one probably wants to talk to your sales team. But if you have 5 fields, facilitating that conversation is a little easier. So simplify and organize.
Awesome. And I do also want to say that, like, Gorilla 76, we're an industrial marketing agency. Hike2, what y'all do is CRMs, right? You help folks implement these sorts of things. So Mike, if I'd like for you to just, like, for a moment, like, tell folks about Hike2 if you could. And because if this is a real problem that you're having, Hike2 could be a really good resource. I would suggest connecting with Michael on LinkedIn, just in general, but yeah.
Definitely. Thank you, Peyton. Yeah, we do a lot around digital transformation, not just with CRMs, but also, when you're talking about commerce clouds and different things all across the Salesforce. Our specialty is around Salesforce CRM, but also ERPs in different areas. But we've worked with other CRMs too, helping manufacturers as well as other industries solve challenges like this. How do you make your system as well as assist with change management, process improvement, all those areas. So if you're looking for some additional information or help, feel free to reach out. Happy to talk with any of you.
Mike, what's your URL?
What's that?
What's the Hike2's website?
Just post it in there. Hike2.com.
Mary's on it. Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And this conversation, we want to keep it going in Slack. So I'll be following up with everybody who's in the Slack community about what that's going to look like. We're going to try and pull Michael in there for a few more questions.
We can just announce it, Peyton. We're going to do an AMA. We're going to ask Mike anything about CRM. So that is going to be a Slack channel exclusive. So if you want to talk to Mike about your CRM, he's going to hop on there. He agreed for an hour or so.
Yep.
And he's going to answer all your questions about CRM. So connect with me, Peyton, and Mary to get into Slack, and then we'll announce the dates and times for that soon.
Yeah, I'll try. I've been working with CRM since 2004 and working globally with implementing different ones across the world. So be happy to assist other folks learn from some mistakes I made. So that way you can skip a few steps, hopefully, with it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Peyton and Mary and Brendan, for having me, and Gorilla 76 for hosting. I think this is a great forum. I've listened in on a few others in my past, so I'll continue.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thanks, everyone. And I'll get those Slack invites out. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
See you, everyone.